Hi guys, so talking to Miss Darren on one of our videos, my Australian pal, decided I'm going to start doing this more often. So sitting down at the laptop, more professional setting, and it also gives me a chance to put some notes in the background, which I find really handy. So that's what I'm going to do for most of the videos from now on, because I feel like a lot of the stuff that I say when I'm out and about, it can be very repetitive, but it can also be unstructured. Do you know what I mean? So it's in the heat of the moment when I'm saying it, and it can come across as a bit messy. I understand that. So at least when I'm sat down here, if I'm missing anything, I can pause the video, go get it, and have myself set up. It's definitely a lot handier. So what I want to talk about today is overlap with autism and other conditions. So again, talking about one of my one of my good friends now who we've been chatting away, Leah G 8010 8010. So we're having a good chat about autism and ADHD and the overlap. So I want to talk about that, but also I was recently given a diagnosis of borderline personality traits. So that's emotionally unstable personality traits, EUPD slash BPD. And there is overlap, and I want to just kind of show you a few Venn diagrams because I do love a good Venn diagram, but kind of showing you what the overlap is, how it presents itself. Sometimes one condition can amplify the other. Do you know what I mean? So one is just bashing off the other and then um, feeding into it. So, like I was saying before, I actually received a diagnosis of ADHD with my autism and comorbid anxiety, and then when I was actually with a clinical psychiatrist who gave me the actual clinical diagnosis. A child psychiatrist said that I had ADHD, but he kind of said that I had everything. Like, so he said autism spectrum disorder, used to be known as Asperger's, then also anxiety, OCD, so obsessive compulsive disorder, Tourette's, and then also ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. So yeah, I got it all in one. But throwing a lot of diagnoses at you, diagnoses. It's not a great cure, is it? It's not going to help you out in the long run. I don't feel so. Well, let's debunk a few of them anyway, and we'll also have a look at depression. So we'll have a look at that and see how that can lead to certain symptoms as well. And then I'll kind of just go over my own experience. Now, I have gone over it before, so I will touch on it briefly. But yeah, have a little discussion. I think it's good to bring it back now to a bit of mental health stuff because I talk about rugby, I talk about current affairs, antisocial problems. If anyone's wondering if why I keep going like that, it's because this part always sticks up while this part looks good, so it's not conforming. I'm going to share my screen with you now. So we're going to have a look at ADHD and autism first of all. So there we are now. Pop me up there. So we look at the definition here. Autism and ADHD are two distinct neurodevelopmental conditions that can impact a person's ability to navigate daily life. While each condition has its own set of characteristics, they also share some similarities and overlap, which can sometimes complicate diagnosis and management. Understanding the differences and similarities between autism and ADHD is important to ensure that people get the right support. Absolutely. So let's have a look at that now. So, as he say, child psychiatrist diagnosed me with ADHD, but then debunked by a clinical psychiatrist who said that I didn't, that the anxiety that I had in my diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder and comorbid anxiety would explain why I was very fidgety and very jumpy. Um, I'm not so sure, but look, that's what was said to me, so I don't have the diagnosis officially of ADHD anymore. Um, and then, as I say, emotionally unstable personality traits, formerly known as borderline. So I'd see it here. Autism has a number of characteristics that can vary widely between people. Key signs of autism include social communication challenges. Absolutely. Autistic people might find it hard to pick up on social cues or struggle to keep up with conversations. This can make it challenging to connect with others and maintain friendships. Yeah, so again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of relay that back to me and how that would have impacted me growing up. So you're kind of trying to relate to everybody. Do you know what I mean? It would have presented itself a lot actually when I tried to fit in at school, and there's all a common joke that everybody's in on, and you're trying to understand what that is, and you're just not getting it. You know what I mean? Also, it's hard if the topic of interest just doesn't interest you. You know, I find a lot of people are into the most inane drivel, and in that case, I'm kind of like, I'm better at faking it now, but I couldn't fake interest before, or feign interest, as they say. It's just like, nah, fuck that. This is boring. Like say for instance, I was always into sport, so I'd go to football training, rugby training, boxing, Gaelic training, and it was always before training that really made me feel awkward because lads had their friend group and they were socializing and chatting, and I was kind of later to develop interests in girls as well, so that's what lads are all talking about. All they can think about is shagging at a certain point. Um, I was kind of later to develop the skills to enable me to go out into the dating scene. Whereas all the other lads had all these experiences that I couldn't really relate to. So I'd say as well, not just the communication challenges there, but also um, trying to play catch up, because you are always playing catch up in the social world, and that can make alcohol extremely appealing. Which it certainly was for me because being socially awkward, you're like, fucking hell, I need something to take away this anxiety. And antidepressants, SSRI medication didn't do that for me. Alcohol most certainly did. So I feel like when you talk about social communication challenges, it's important to be aware of alcohol. So, like, I would say it did improve my social ability. Now, I became an obnoxious prick at times as well, but before I started drinking, I was an anxious wreck sitting in the corner. Now, I had to develop the skills and through actually talking to people and having, one to one conversations with them when we were all sober. So it kind of like everybody says the negatives of alcohol nowadays, there's a lot of them. But one thing it helped me do was build connections. And they talk about that where, when you've got a drink in your hand and you're socializing and I simply did not have the social skills necessary to relate to people a lot of the times. You know what I mean? So it's a very tough one and you feel very isolated. And then of course, naturally not everyone's nice about it. So people will laugh at you and shun you for obviously standing out like a sore thumb and that's not fun either. We go down to the next one. Um, so special interests for a special guy. They might have an intense enthusiasm about particular subjects or activities that capture most of their attention and time. Right, yeah. So um, this one could apply to me at times, So special interests, I would say I loved, like I say, I love sports. So I did. I really did love every kind of sport you could imagine. I used to even watch men's hockey before. Anything that was on the telly, I would watch sport related. SPL as well, Scottish Premier League. Dundee, that was my team. Dundee United. Obviously, Celtic could be the main ones, but I always liked watching Dundee. For some reason, I don't know what it was. But like I used to be obsessed with match attacks. Anyone remember that? And I had my big binder full of them, and I used to buy loads of them. And whatever pocket money I get as a kid, I'd spend all the money on that. I had all the magazines, and I knew every player of every team. Um, it's funny because I have family from Holland, and they'd be big Ajax fans, and they said I could name more players in the Ajax team than they could. They said like my Dutch uncle was like, he knows it all, he knows it all. It's like I didn't even know that. All the players, you know what I mean? Though you can really hone in on it. It's it's mad. Like I could just hone in all my attention on that. Um, I was also kind of, and my family kind of laugh at this, but they also were kind of impressed. So I don't know if anybody else, like any football fans, noticed this, but I was interested in how a footballer dribbled with the ball. So anyone ever remember Pedro Rodriguez, who played for Barcelona and Chelsea? So he was really good at dribbling on both feet. So if he was on the right wing, he could dribble inside on his left foot and have a shot, and then on the left wing, he could dribble inside on his right foot. He was equally good on both feet, and it was really impressive. I don't know if anyone's going to be impressed or kind of, creeped out by this. There was a Czech footballer as well. His name was Yaroslav Plasheil, and he had a really good free kick off either foot. And I thought it was really cool, so I always tried to do that, and that was kind of my special interest of. I mean, it's good for training as well, to getting good off both feet. So I practice curling the ball with my left foot because I'm naturally right-footed. Um, but I think that can be a positive to your special interest. Um, Now I could be gone for hours doing it, or I used to have like action figures that I play with a little rugby ball off a keychain. So when the 2007 World Cup came around, I used to have like Mega Blocks and Connects, magnets and all, and I used to make little goalposts and then have them play rugby against each other. And my mum said I could sit for hours doing that, which I think is a good thing. The art of play is interesting, and it's good for brain development. So I think it's something that isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like all these traits aren't necessarily bad. Just want to highlight that. And I think it's important to highlight the positive side of being neurodivergent, of which there is a lot, I might add. And I think I've gone away from that a little bit on this channel. So I think it's important to bring it back. That's why it was started in the first place, after all. But we're going to look at something else. A lot of these can tie in with each other as well, just FYI, so one can relate to the other. Repetitive behaviors. Autistic people might engage in repetitive behaviors and movements, such as repeating certain phrases and sounds and having very specific routines. These behaviors can provide comfort or help manage anxiety. This one's gas, right? So there's a thing in autism called echolalia. So best way to describe it, my brother always laughs at this. I shouldn't have told him the phrase for it. So I want to just highlight that me and my brother take the piss out of each other, and it's all meant in good spirits. I do plenty of it to him, believe me. So he's well justified in this, but uh, it's very funny. So, Rain Man, if you've ever seen Rain Man, when the radio comes on, and I'm literally echolalia, if that makes sense. But Rain Man will go 97X, bam, the future of rock and roll, because it's on the radio and he'll keep doing it. So it's like 97X, bam, the future of rock and roll. And then when the toothpicks fall on the ground, Raymond, how many of the toothpicks are on the ground? 87, 87 toothpicks, 87. You know what I mean? But he's also a savant, which is why he can count cards and also the two picks on the ground. He's a casino's worst nightmare. Repetitive behaviors as well, but like talk about stimming. So one thing for me that I always liked, and I've talked about Polynesian culture and how I love it. And because I'm a big rugby fan, I always was obsessed with the haka. So it was actually a really good stim for me. So any Kiwis out there, you'll probably love me, but I think it's called the pukana, isn't it? When you just stick the tongue out really wide. But I used to watch it on the telly when New Zealand were playing the All Blacks, and I used to do that. Like so, like they were doing in the haka. You can probably see my tats are all Polynesian as well. I love the culture. Big rugby countries, so props to you guys. But yeah, I used to always just start tapping my hands and then like tap the back of my hand. I remember watching it on the telly and just really being obsessed with it and looking at how they were doing it, and then I'd tap my quads as well, which is how they perform the haka, and that's why I did it. I forgot for a while, and then I was like, that's why I did it, yeah, because I start doing it again and like tapping my chest. It's actually very good at relieving stress. So the Maori people might be onto something. It's not just a war cry and a war dance. It's also a good stress reliever. if you're ever tense. And it does work. Like sometimes I'll even tap my shoulders or I'll start stretching as I'm doing it. It's mad, but it works, you know. It's not necessarily repetitive. It's just kind of something I do. I'm fully aware that I'm doing it. My mom said it's funny because she'll catch me sometimes going, and I'm aware that I'm doing it, but I make weird faces. I make strange faces, and my family will look at it and go, "Oh, jeez, what's happening there?" But in a funny kind of way. It is funny sometimes. We have a good laugh about it because I'll just be tensing my hands, and they'll be like, "Oh, what the fuck's going on here?" So like, it's important to have a laugh about it. Like I'm like I take the piss out of them. So we're Irish after all. We got to have a laugh. So sensory sensitivity. A lot more when I was younger, let me tell you. Autistic people might have an unusual sorry, autistic people might have unusual reactions to the way things sound, feel, taste, smell, or look. They might find these sensory inputs to be overwhelming, or might not react to things that usually cause a sensory response in other people. So that was definitely me. Bright lights in schools, fluorescent lights used to give me terrible migraines. Like I used to get really bad eye sensitivity, and I went to the doctor before, who said I go to an optician, who said I had perfect 20/20 vision. I was like, but that's not the issue. It's the sensitivity. Like, do you have any glasses that I could wear? And it's like, none are approved for schools. Plus, you go around kind of looking like Cyclops from X-Men with your little shades. Another thing for me was I couldn't wear jeans, right? So if anyone can relate to that, I hated the sensation of jeans on me. So my mum will often joke again that I look like a tramp going around, but it's comfort over how I look. You know what I mean? It was the feeling, and even sometimes nowadays, like I'm much better than I was, just down to trial and error and you know repetition, I suppose. But it was very bad when I was younger. I couldn't wear jeans for any length of time. And it upsets me, sometimes thinking back, like obviously my mom, my dad wanted me to look nice going out for dinner, and that really does cause me upset where I couldn't sit still and I couldn't focus and I couldn't enjoy a dinner because it was so overwhelming, like the lights, the noise of everyone around you. Oh, so yeah, that often can make me upset, can be a trigger for me because I think to myself, all the supposedly happy times that could have been if I wasn't such a wreck, you know. It was just so overwhelming, like the noises, the bright lights, people bumping into you was a big thing. So I'd say more for me, this will fail. Taste, in fairness, taste and smell never too bad. And my mum was always very good at with that now, in fairness to her. So she would make food for me. She'd always place, like, say, I always liked spaghetti bolognese, but I hated the mince touching off the spaghetti. So she made that separately for me. And there's where you can do stuff like that. You don't have to be difficult. Like I said, I'll eat that, no problem. Or she'd make me salmon and broccoli because it was a healthy meal and I've always loved fish, but she was happy that I was eating a nutritious meal. Where that can where it can go wrong is when you've got habits and you only eat the same shite. So I knew this kid who only used to eat chicken nuggets and chips. And you're not going to get very healthy off that, are you? So you kind of have to watch this one. And in fairness to my mom, she used to make so many good meals and she's a great cook. So that definitely helped. Um, Plus, I developed an interest in cooking, having worked in kitchens myself. So we combine. I'm not saying my cooking's better than hers, heaven forbid, but it's good to be able to prepare nice meals for yourself because you don't want to be getting takeaway, and it's tempting. Believe me. I need to sometimes rein it in because I'm like, look, I'm buying too fucking many because it's pleasurable to the palate. You know what I mean? Like a nice big pizza or something, but at the same time, you want to be eating healthy because my gut, my gastrointestinal system, which they haven't really mentioned that here necessarily, but that would be part of your sensory system where your gastrointestinal tract is a lot more sensitive. So certain foods and textures can make people with autism gag, It's just the texture is horrible. Not even the taste. Some foods tasted lovely, but it was the texture of them that made me feel sick. And I'm sure plenty of autistic people can relate to that. You know, um, yeah, and might not react to things that usually cause a sensory response in other people. Now, I find this one is people will react a certain way, and I'll try and read how they're reacting to it. Like they're upset by something, and I'm kind of like, oh, should I be upset too? And that's kind of how I would sum it up. So it's like I should be annoyed at that because they're annoyed at it, but I'm not innately annoyed by it, if that makes sense. So if someone shows up to a party 2.5 hours late all the time, or they go off and ditch you for somebody else, I was kind of like, there were so many shitty friends around. I kind of got used to it, and then somebody else would be like, "Oh, Jesus, I wouldn't let them treat you that way," and I'd be like, "Oh, what have I been doing everything wrong?" And because I got so used to it, you know what I mean? You're kind of like, "Oh, okay, this is the norm then." So I'd say if neurotypical people do something, you kind of expect that's the accepted way things are done. So I'd say lack of boundaries as well, is definitely something that can happen with autistic people, and I'm not just saying this in myself, but with other people. Um, so while I'm bad with it, I'm getting better. I've cut ties with people that just don't make me feel good about myself, and only meet up when it's convenient for them, and that's not good to anybody, and you don't deserve to be treated like that. You're not inferior to anybody, so don't fucking let people treat you that way. It's not right. I'd say that, like when it comes to sensory stuff, stuff that would make people angry, but they know that they're justified in their anger. Whereas I'd be like, am I allowed to be angry here, or is this over the top? And let me tell you, a lot of adults didn't help with that because they really messed me up. I was there thinking, am I allowed to get angry? Is it reasonable? Um, that sensory kind of thing, or is it normal to be anxious at this event or something? So I would say fight or flight senses are something that I might not react to, or my thing is very much in the moment. So if I'm uncomfortable, I got to get the fuck out of there. I'll feel my heart start to pound, I'll start sweating, I'll get dry mouth, etc. I get very tense and angry and just want to leave. But it's very much usually on social cues, I don't get very pissed off because I don't know what I'm allowed to fucking get pissed off at, and I don't read the situation. I'll read into stuff thinking because people have taken advantage of me, I'll be like, oh, should I be getting annoyed at that? Or is that just a joke? Is that a slag? Should I just let that one slide? And then eventually you let everything fucking slide. And then you're like, well, I need to set boundaries. It's very hard to set boundaries when you don't know what's deemed the social norm. Do you know what I mean? And the funny thing is, there's no right or wrong. It's just what people have deemed to be acceptable. I'd like to just make that point. So you might think your way of reacting is wrong. It's not. It's just not the common way of dealing with things. So I want you to kind of think of it like that. You know what I mean? You might think everything I do is wrong. Why can't they be like everyone else? Lots of people are sheep from what I've seen, and they just follow a certain way of living because everybody else is doing it, and then we all end up the same. We all do the same shit. We're afraid to step outside our comfort zone. Fuck that. Lots of people don't ask for help. Lots of people in college, like when I was there, would look at you and kind of snigger if you put your hand up because it's like, oh, this fella's asking a question. He doesn't know something he should. And you're kind of like, fuck off, just because you're not going to answer. I'd say you're afraid to ask. In fairness to one of the lecturers, when that happened, he said, I bet lots of you don't know because me and one other lad put our hands up and everybody started kind of sniggering at us and we were looking at each other kind of laughing, kind of going, yeah, I bet they don't know either. And your mum was like, yeah, exactly. We were kind of like, we've got each other's backs. But fair play to the lecturer for saying, don't start judging them when you don't know either. So I kind of feel like in that sense, I'm better at going, look, fuck it. I don't know it. And I'm not going to sit here and just be like the rest of you. I'm going to admit that I don't know because I don't want to fail college. So I think in that sense, we're kind of better. We've got a mind of our own and fucking unleash it. Don't be afraid to unleash it. I know it's hard because you're afraid of standing out from the crowd and looking stupid, but better stuff. Do you know what I mean? At least you have the balls to ask. So don't be afraid to do it. Um, a long rant about that, but we get on with the video and we come into ADHD. So, in contrast to what we just mentioned there, ADHD symptoms primarily involve issues with attention regulation, impulsivity, and hyperactivity that can impact daily life and learning. These may include inattention. People with ADHD may struggle to focus on tasks, miss details, and don't seem to listen when they're being spoken to directly. Um, Sometimes with me, yeah, my brother, we all say my brother's riddled with ADHD because I'll literally finish a sentence with him. He'll have listened to a little bit of it, and then it'll be scrolling on the phone or not paying attention, and then I'll just laugh and go, Sam, and then he'll go, what? Um, I wouldn't say necessarily I have inattention, but sometimes I struggle to maintain all the information, especially when I'm anxious. Will struggle to make eye contact, but that's kind of more with my autism element, So I'll be kind of looking away and going like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. In work, this affects me the most because it's usually more stressful. In rugby training, what it really happened with was drills. So football as well, But when someone would be showing me a drill, I hated going first. So like say a passing drill where you're doing if anyone's ever played rugby, like four men in a line, you're passing the ball just side to side. In football, it could be simply just passing the ball across to another fella. My dad was my coach and he used to scream at me, which didn't help. But I kind of thought he's right. I also didn't want to let him down because he was the coach, but my dad. But it was something we could talk about as well, which is good. But he wasn't very sympathetic if I drift off, and sometimes I could drift off and just not be present. It wasn't even that I wasn't trying, I just couldn't grasp what was happening. Um, and yeah, I do miss details, and I would say I listen. I'd say I do listen. So, as I say, not everyone's the same. There is a bit of overlap with these things. And it's kind of yes and no. I can struggle to focus on tasks if I find them unstimulating, So, like, if they're very mind-numbingly boring, I'm kind of like, well, I mean, that's everybody to be fair, but I will procrastinate to fuck. So I find if I'm in a certain mood where I'm very productive, I try and get lots done. It saves me having to do a lot of shit later on. You know what I mean? So it's like rather than having to go back to it and do equal bits. So some people might say, um, people who are good at studying, that is, what they might do is they might say, and I've heard people say it before, I'll do an equal amount every day for the week. You know what I mean? That doesn't work for me. I've tried it, it doesn't work. What I tend to do is I try and get a lump sum done when I'm feeling productive. I'm feeling lucky. Um, rather than just going at it a little bit. Now, one piece of advice that I will give you if you're like me, and remember, I did get a diagnosis of ADHD, but then it was taken from me. Um, so obviously they thought there was enough there initially. So there's obviously something present. Um, One piece of advice I would give you is, and I said it to my brother, and it worked for him brilliantly. And he thinks he has a bit of ADHD himself, but we're not talking, oh, sure, everybody has a bit of that. These symptoms would resonate with him, I'd say, a lot more than me. Some of them, yes, but not all of them. But what I say to him is, if you've got a report to do, and I used to do it for my lab reports in college, put in the date, put in your partner's name, put in the discussion, the introduction, the objectives. You can see all the sciencey elements of it now. Get it? Elements. See what I did. Um, but what I said to him was, even if you just write a little bit under each heading, when you go back to that, your mind is now tricked to thinking, well, I'm not starting from scratch. Does that make sense? So when you go to that now, you're like, I've already started it. There's a little trick there. It was a piece of advice I got before, and I thought it was great advice. If you struggle and you procrastinate a lot, start at the day you get it. And I don't mean do loads. I mean put in the easy stuff like the heading, um, like the date, your partner's name, your your date of birth, your credit card details. No, but whatever you have to put it in. Introduction, objectives. You get the point. It just makes everything a lot easier if you're like me and tend to drift off. And my brother as well. I actually might show him this and see what he thinks because it might be very helpful for him, to be honest with you. Yeah, missed details. I have missed details before. It's usually when I'm doing loads of different tasks. You probably few of you might find this as well, but what'll happen is I remember this before. There was a rugby trial on, and I thought it was going to be indoors, right? So in a gym hall, the gymnasium, and I didn't fully read the detailed description of what was going to take place that day. So there was a layout of everything that was going to happen. This is pretty embarrassing, right? But this is a good example of how details are missed. And sometimes I have to try exceptionally hard when I'm being spoken to. But the details of the day were given out, right? The debrief was given, and it said bring a gum shield or mouth guard if you're American or not Irish anyway. Bring a mouth guard and bring boots because we will be going out into the pitch. I read the first half and then skipped ahead. And this is because now I was working in school. I was stressed out to fucking bits. I studying for the leaving cert, loads of shit going on. My mind just couldn't retain all the information. So I was skipping through. You thought, yeah, grand, grand. Always read every detail and then read it again. You know what I mean? Actually, another piece of advice for you there, if you're like me, what you should do is start at the bottom and work your way up. So if you start here, what tended to happen with me a lot was I'd start with, in contrast, ADHD, might get to impulsivity, and then think, grand, yeah, I'm sorted, great. And then I missed the last part, time management and organization. I missed the overlap on the big Venn diagram down there. Um, so what I do now is I'll start with the Venn diagram and I'll work my way back up. So then you're reading back up it, you know what I mean? And you're kind of going, ah, yeah, yeah, yeah. Because loads of people, including HR departments now, when they're reading through your CV, even they scan through documents and they'll probably miss stuff, doesn't catch their eyes in the first 2 seconds, you know? So there's a piece of advice for you there. If you miss details and struggle to pay attention and focus on tasks, just like myself. So another one, hyperactivity. They might seem to be moving constantly, fidgeting, not being able to sit still or stay in their seat, and have a general sense of restlessness. This definitely applies to me, but I think this can apply to autism as well. They didn't mention it up here. It can apply, but it's definitely more common with ADHD. Just talk to my dad. My dad used to come over to me and I'd be fidgeting. You can't see it with my knees. I'm going to show you my crotch now. That's a bit weird, isn't it? We won't go that far. But my dad would literally come in because my knees would be rattling and he'd go like this and then put his hands down on my knees and push them into the ground and go, Jesus, you haven't stayed easy the whole time. Not in a forceful way, just a real gentle. Yeah. I didn't even realize I was doing it, but I can't sit still for a second. Like you probably see me and I'm fidgeting around like William Shatner from Star Trek. But I'll be tapping on stuff like that. I'll be rattling. I'll be touching my arms. I get very bad stiffness in my shoulders and my neck as well, especially when I'm anxious. My mom said it to me before. So my dad would do my knees and my mom would do my shoulders. So my mom would just notice me and she noticed my shoulders coming up like that and my neck kind of going forward, which is actually quite a common thing when you're anxious. But what she would do is she would literally just push them back down and it was helpful. Plus, she's got very soft hands, which are really nice on my shoulders. My brother has very surprisingly soft, but also big, thick, meaty hands. Like Mr. Krabs, big, meaty claws. My brother has very good grip strength. Like he's exceptionally strong, but his hands are really good for getting in between the joints and just he's the best at cracking backs as well. So if my back's ever tight, especially after a rugby game, I'd say, Sam, please crack my back. And he'd just come in, lift me up, and it was done in 2 seconds. He knew exactly what he was doing. He's a chiropractor and a half. But yeah, I would never be able to stay still. I'd be constantly tapping I would cross and uncross my legs about 50 times. I still do. You know, I can't sit still for a second or be going to the toilet because I can't stop drinking water because I drink a lot of water when I'm nervous because I get really dry mouth. So, yeah, it's a fun cycle. And then I'd have to stand up, sit down, you know, the whole lot. A lot of fun. I'm getting into an interesting one now, impulsivity. So people with ADHD might act without appearing to think about the consequences and how their behavior might impact on other people. For example, interrupting conversations and not being able to wait their turn are some common impulsive behaviors. What I feel like they really should hammer home is addiction. So I read something now, it could even be higher than this, but people with ADHD are 5 times more likely to develop a serious addiction. I think that can be as high as 10 times more likely. Um, in some cases, you know. So a lot of people with ADHD get addictions because easily bored, but stimulants. I love my stimulants. um, there's a lot of different reasons, and Leah, we were chatting. If you're watching, I hope you are because this is a really good one, which I'm hoping you say you've been watching anyway for 6 months. So I know that you will be tuning in, and we appreciate it. But let us know anyway if you can relate to any of what I've said so far. But we were having a really good conversation, and I was talking about addiction and autism. There are some studies with autism and addiction, way more common than ADHD though. And I've always loved fizzy drinks, loved them, and because I've always been an active kid, even though like I might not have been the best socially, I was always active. I was always doing some sort of sport, you know, and I loved energy drinks, especially Lucozade, glucose drinks. Fucking love them. Lucozade Sport. There was never a time when I wasn't drinking a fizzy drink. Even now, like I'm still bad for them. In school, I used to have a 4 pack of Monster. You know, the Monster Original and the um, black and green cans. I used to keep them in my locker, and I used to go to the gym at 7 a.m. in the morning, rugby training during the week. I don't know how I carried out half the shit that I did. So I talked about it before, but we go through it again. So one stage, um, 7 a.m. gym session on Monday and Friday, um, class all day, then rugby training after class in those days, games on Wednesday. I'd go for a 12-kilometer run on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Sometimes even I would do it. Yeah, Jesus. Sometimes I could do 4 of them. I don't know how I kept up with that for so long. Um, Needed the fucking monster. I'd have games on Wednesdays. Um, Me and my brother literally did, what was it, 12 kilometers the night before we had a big game, and then we both played 80 minutes the whole game. Fat chance, and I mean fat chance because I'm a fat bastard. No way I'm doing that now. Lasted 65 minutes, so not too bad. In my last game, did not think I'd be able for that, but yeah, it was definitely not feasible. Um, Plus, it worked as well. I don't fucking know how I did it, you know, how I got through the leaving cert and all that. But my mind needs stimulation. Do you know what I mean? I get bored very easily. And then didn't help that I was awkward. So I think to silence my mind and all the overthinking that I do, alcohol was brilliant for that. It also loosened me up. So I think the ADHD and the autism were completely just quashed by alcohol. So one, help you hyper focus. So caffeine, you're laser focused. You know what I mean? It's no surprise to give stimulants to kids with ADHD to keep them focused. But I'm also thinking they're already quite stimulated, so do you need to give them another stimulant? Like Adderall is an amphetamine. It's basically meth in a pill, obviously without all the pseudo man. Remember Jesse and the phosphorus red, which is toxic. So it's not obviously as bad, but still not good to be giving your kids, put it that way. There's been a lot of talk about that over in the States. Concerta, Ritalin, or other drugs as well. But yeah, never taken any of them, thank God. But alcohol is something that silences all the thoughts going on in your head, but it also stops the autism awkwardness. So ADHD noise and volume and going on in your head 24/7, thoughts ping, ping, pinging all the time. And then with autism as well, you overthink, and we do 100%. And also a bit uptight, we're thinking, oh, I feel uncomfortable here, I'm awkward, I'm anxious. Those inhibitions are fucking gone. Bye bye. Alcohol just gave me a different personality altogether, which was good and bad. Because I thought I'm a boring fucker, I'm never going to find a wife. Jeez, I was thinking way down the line. This was 14 when I started drinking. Who will be my wife? You find young women looking for an eligible bachelor. No wonder I struggled, but it did. It gave me that confidence, and loads of lads do that. They go for a drink and it loosens them up. But then I do it when I was watching the football with my mates. I love doing it. I do it after rugby games, and the whole week I've been banging the stimulants into me to keep me going. The sugar, the caffeine, then at the weekend to relax, alcohol, cigarettes, etc. I wouldn't smoke the whole week. I never smoked, and then all of a sudden I do it at the weekend. I was a real typical social smoker. In school, I did it as well. Like I smoked because, well, I wanted to be one of the cool kids, but it also gave me a really good relief from stresses of exams and everything. At first, it made me feel kind of sick, and then afterwards, it was like, oh, that's lovely. That's really relaxing me. But it's a lot of shit going into your body. When I think about it, I was like, that's a lot of crap going into your body and it's going to damage you. So you got to be careful with that, you know. What else? Gambling. Jesus, and that's one now that I talked about before, but I want to just touch on this because gambling is huge in Ireland. I counted it before, right? And I think this is fucking criminal. But when I was watching a football match with my mate, so that's 90 minutes, and then you've got half time, you've got the build up before the game. There were 12 betting ads, right? And you've got Novi Bet, Paddy Power, Tony Cascarino constantly popping up. This is Tony Bet, and we're it. I love Tony Cascarino, great, and Ireland, great. An Englishman of Italian and Polish descent. Still an Ireland great, but fucking hell, that ad is doing my nothing. The Tony Bet. You've got Novi Bet, Ball Sports. But there's so many different fucking ads. Like my cousin, when he came over from Holland, was saying, I find it insane how many gambling ads there are over here. And I was like, what do you mean? Do you not have them in Holland? And he's like, no, 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 there's much stricter regulations. Ireland and the UK have some very, very lax gambling advertisement laws. And it's no wonder that loads of people are. Voice went for a second, but it's no wonder that loads of people are gambling because it's everywhere. It's insane. But yeah, like impulsivity as well. Like I could get an idea in my head and think, go with that, roll with it. It's a good idea. Like ask that girl out awkwardly and messy. Or I've done some very impulsive shit and it's got me into a lot of trouble at times. But with alcohol, it only gets worse, FYI. So if you're riddled with ADHD, there's a lot of people say, but if you've got ADHD, and I mean this seriously, and you're impulsive, which you're more likely to be, mind out for stuff that will lower your inhibitions because you're more likely to develop an addiction to that feeling. Um, I was talking to my mate Fergal, when I was saying, I'll touch wood, he's okay, but and Izzy from the compassion focused therapy group, both of them are diagnosed with ADHD. But Fergal was telling me that a person with ADHD, basically what happens is someone who doesn't have ADHD will say need one, let's just give an example. One cup of coffee stimulates them and they feel fine. And if you were to give an ADHD person the same amount, they'd need 5 cups of coffee to get the same effect. Roughly, like I'm spitballing, but it's a good bit more. They need like 5 times the stimulation of an average human to feel stimulated. A neurotypical person without ADHD, that is, would only need that 1 cup of coffee, whereas someone with ADHD will need 5 of them to get the same effect, essentially. So somebody could be fine with, say, if 3 drinks in the pub and then they're off home. Someone with ADHD will, well, let's multiply that by 5, shall we? So 3 drinks by 5, that's 15. So 15 points to get the same effect, roughly, again. which is not good. And I would have been very much the one who stayed out all night, just loved the feeling because alcohol gave me a stimulating effect. And if anybody here watches Jordan Peterson, which I know a few of you do, Jordan Peterson, be a monster. But an interesting point he made was if alcohol gives you a stimulating effect, you should be very concerned, because that can lead to danger because it's a good feeling. And that's exactly what I got. I get a very stimulating effect with alcohol. Now, I do enjoy a few pints, and I've managed to get to a point where I can have one or two and be okay. I'm over a month now without any, or you know, just a month coming up to over a month. But I feel like I've got a better handle on what works for me and what doesn't. But I will be the one who says I'll stay and have a few more. Whereas a family member might say, "Oh, come meet up with us. We're doing something." I'll be like, "Okay, well, I have to be there for that." And now I'm a lot more sensible, because I've got more responsibilities that I focus on, and I don't want to always have a hangover. That nobody wants to go around with a hangover all the time. And they're getting worse now, and I'm only 26. So imagine when I hit my 40s, how bad they're gonna get if I'm getting pissed drunk all the time. Perish the thought. So I think we went into a good bit of detail, but impulsivity is something I think that will get you into a lot of trouble. Hyperactivity, maybe not. That can actually be a good thing. You can use that and channel that into something creative. I think that's what people don't talk about with ADHD. They're not always the disruptive kid. You just need something to channel that energy into. Um, the inattention, maybe it's not with everything. Maybe it's just with most things because that stimulating effect is what they need to get. And if they get it, good. Um, but just while I'm on the subject, because I feel like it's such an important one to talk about, is addiction, which is directly linked to impulsivity. There was a lad in the team before that I played with when I was so when I joined the first um, straight out of school, straight out of camp, when I was 18 and 19, and there was a lad in the team that I was chatting with, and we met later, like a few years later afterwards, and we were chatting, and I said I had autism. And he was like, "Yeah, but you're a good laugh, and fair play to you. You're one of the lads, and we don't think any less of you for it, nor should we, But you just get on with it, and it's impressive how well you've managed it." And he said he has ADHD, and he's a big, strong fella, great genetics. Jesus, I wish I had his genetics. I don't know if he ever took performance enhancing drugs because he's a bit of a fucking hothead, but always sound to me, so I like him. Um, but when he said he had ADHD, I thought that makes sense because this lad used to smoke a lot. Um, he drank like a fish. He did coke after games regularly. His heart, Jesus, poor heart, because he used to whack the pre-workout into him before games as well. And then he gave me some. He was like, "Hey, Dan, take a bit of that. That'll give you the spruce up you need." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I took some of it and I thought I was going to shit myself and also have a heart attack on the pitch. Thank God neither happened. But that was too much. I was like, I'll stick with a can of Monster or a Red Bull, if even. I try not to consume energy drinks anymore because they're fucking poison. But my God, that stimulating effect was amazing. Problem is, you build up a tolerance and then, it stays. And then you need something, you take more and pound more and more into you to get that same effect. And if you've got ADHD, that can be a big problem. So, time management and organization. They might struggle to organize tasks, frequently lose personal items, and find it challenging to meet deadlines. That will kind of sum me up as well. Lose items, forget where I put them. Um, think that I was after being robbed and finding an item. So when I worked out in Dunboyne in Southeast Meath, I was travelling an hour and a half on public transport from Walkinstown all the way out to Dunboyne. And then I was travelling back to Gorey on the weekends. So what would happen is I'd be getting loads of bags and stuff, and I'd be bringing boots with me because sometimes there'd be games for Gorey Rugby Club out in Dublin. So I'd be bringing stuff out with me. I remember we had a game out in Sutton. and I got the dart back to Connolly Station, then got home to Walkinstown from there, then went to the Red Cow for a birthday party. So yeah, I kept saying it to my mom. I was like, "Oh, where is everything?" I don't. She's like, "There's loads of stuff with you, you know." And it's like carrying laptops, boots for rugby, all this shit, t-shirts, jerseys, etc. Then work clothes because you wanted to dress nice for work. Until I realized that I was doing night shift and nobody would ever see me, and then I just dressed in my tracksuit bottoms. But in the office, you want to look nice. So you have your jeans on, and but yeah, it was a clusterfuck, my mind. So there was a lot of, oh, did I bring this? Did I bring my mom would constantly be checking to make sure I had everything. And in fairness to her, she did the checklist all the time. But I'd get so frustrated with myself. I'd be like, yeah, I have everything. I have everything. And she'd be like, I'm only saying it to help you out. And then I'm like, I understand. But at the time, I'm so frustrated. I can't fucking think at the minute. Um, so her saying it to me only reminded me of how much shit that I needed to bring. I'll always forget something without fail, unfortunately. And sometimes as well, don't know if anyone can relate to this, but when I'm very burnt out, but now I need to get a walk in or exercise, I will say, fuck this, I just need to leave. I need to leave now because if I don't leave now, I'll never leave for that walk. And I'll forget to lock the front door. I'll forget my phone. I'll forget my keys. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, oh, for fuck's sake. I can just have complete lapses in memory where I don't remember to bring stuff with me. Struggle to organize tasks, yes. Forget where I put personal items, if not lose them, and forget where the fuck they are, without fail as well. Yeah, 100%. Got really good at meeting deadlines in college, and I'm impressed with myself for that because that was always a challenge for me. Um, I found it hard to make it in on time for work a lot of times. I'd always find that I'd forget something. I get distracted, not realize the time, think I had longer than I did. Half an hour, fine. Next thing you know, it's 5 minutes before your shift's about to start. Oh fuck, better get to work. Something that happened to me regularly. For sure, needing extra time with reports in college. Now got better as time went on, needed to get better too. There's only so much extra time you're going to be given, but worked on it. And you can work on it too. It's definitely something you can get stronger at, thankfully. Just gonna pause that for a second. I'll get back. Hey guys, I'm back. So now what we're gonna look at is my favorite Venn diagram, and we're gonna just look at how they overlap with each other. So the overlap little section in the middle, and then on either side we have what we already mentioned. So what I'm gonna do for this video, just before I get into this, I'm gonna do a series on this. Like so autism and overlap. Starting with ADHD because I feel like it's a very common one. And I want you guys to let me know if you want more of this stuff. You can just let me know. Um, let me know what you'd like to see more of, and give me suggestions. Anything, always welcome on this. As long as you don't tell me to shut the fuck up and stop making videos. you know. But I always am open to suggestions, and it wouldn't be a channel without going into details about what people would like to see. So yeah, definitely Miss Dern as well as I've got to look into making a video on a few of your suggestions. And if you've got any more, post them in below. Um, but I don't want to make this too long, so I'm going to get into this now because I do love to go into detail. So this is like recognizing overlap. So I discussed there. So with autism, we have we're going to get into it now, but we have with autism social communication challenges, restricted interests, repetitive behaviors, sensory sensitivity. Um, with ADHD, we have inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity, issues with organization, and then how these two combine and intertwine would be difficulty maintaining focus, interrupting others, emotional dysregulation, and hyperactivity. Um, So yeah, interrupting others, I can often find myself in a situation where the person's taking too long. Do you know what I mean? It's like I need to get this point out now, but then also with the impulsivity of ADHD, I think it can be a case of that's assuming I have it now, but it can be a case where I have to get this out now, or I'm going to lose it, and it's such a good thought that I have to get it down now. With autism, it's like I have a real interest in something. I could talk for Ireland about it if I'm interested in it, and someone will have to actually stop me sometimes because I just keep talking and talking and tell them every single detail. And it might come across as maybe a bit arrogant or cocky, but it's also therapeutic and it feels like I have to get it out or I'm going to burst. You know what I mean? Which is why I do it. You can imagine if you've got social difficulties, particularly around communication, inattention, right? So you're not paying attention, you're socially awkward, you're not going to be very appealing to people. So it can be quite difficult if you've got the two conditions together. If you're very hyper and jittery all the time but have restricted interests, if you're repeating stuff all the time, it can be quite annoying for a lot of people, which I've found out. Wonderful. People are a lot more understanding now, just FYI. So we've never been in a better time for empathy and understanding, in my opinion. A lot of people are willing to make the effort. We just have to be empathetic to them. And I think a lot of autistic people are willing to do that, to be honest. The neurodivergent people in general, I think from what I've seen, a lot of them are quite willing to be, including myself, we are willing to be open and upfront. We want to get it out. We want to tell you how we all feel. Um, so some people have told me I go on about it. I'm kind of like, I'm saying it to you so you don't feel uncomfortable if I do anything. So if I tell you this might be because of autism, feel free to pick me up and let me know if you didn't understand anything in a relaxed manner. That's fine. Like if I was a bit blunt, maybe just say, sorry, I just wanted to ask what you meant by this. And I'll be like, oh, yeah, yeah, meant nothing by it. Thanks for asking. Not trying to look like a rude prick. Sometimes I can be a little bit blunt, especially when I get frustrated. Um, so yeah, there will be times where I can come across as quite rude, maybe. But I go out of my way to be polite to most people I meet. It's just sometimes we all get moments where we're overwhelmed. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I think I do my best to be polite. Um, I certainly don't allow my outside life to affect people in the workplace. I don't feel like I have the right to infringe on other people's rights just because I'm having a bad day. Put it that way. But a lot of people sadly do seem to think that it's okay to do that. It's not. I don't care if you're neurotypical, um, neurodivergent, whatever. You don't have the right to infringe on somebody else and their rights just because you're having a bad day. They didn't do that to you. If they've wronged you, you've probably got good reason. And I'm more than happy to say stand up for yourself, but you don't have to be an arsehole ever, you know. And if you're calm and respectful, you can defend yourself without raising your voice. And I think you'll get the point across a lot better if you do. I find that screaming at people, and the two of us just butting heads and screaming back and forth and never did anything to help me, to be honest. Um, so, yeah, with that all being said, while there are clear differences between autism and ADHD, they also share a number of traits which can sometimes make diagnosis challenging. Common overlapping symptoms include difficulties in maintaining focus. People with autism and ADHD can struggle with concentration, although the reasons for this can vary. For example, autistic people may become distracted due to overwhelming sensory sensitivities, whereas people with ADHD might be more inattentive in general. Yeah, so that definitely makes sense, and that's why I say, I haven't been officially diagnosed. I was, then it was taken away. So my official diagnosis is autism spectrum disorder and comorbid anxiety. But there's definitely a lot of symptoms that do align with ADHD. But both can lose focus. What's that? Just joking, just joking. Um, yeah, and I can relate to both really just being inattentive and dozy in general, but also when I become overwhelmed and like get me the fuck out of here, it's too much. I need to leave. I need to leave. I was like, yeah, yeah, that's great, but I need to get out of here. you know. So I'm not taking in everything I should because I'm overwhelmed. That's an added stress for us as autistic people. I don't think a lot of people understand. Not that they aren't willing to, a lot of them are. I will say, and in fairness, I've been very pleasantly surprised by the amount of people that are willing to help. It's most people. It's the majority, not the minority, which is great. And that's brilliant to see. And it's kind of annoying when so I went into specialist and I have been working with them, trying to find me employment, but then also have, like an autistic friendly environment. So there would be somebody there in my corner if anything got too much that I could consult with. Special accommodations could be made, and even the worker that was helping me out, she was really nice. Rachel, she said, "What you're asking for is not that much. In fairness, it's very basic. Like you wouldn't think that you're asking for anything. I like how do I even phrase that? All I really need is a desk that might be ideally doesn't have to be, but ideally if it could be away from directly under fluorescent lights, that would be ideal for me because I get very bad eye sensitivity. Um, I don't need a desk, in a hub away from everybody. Or she said that some people were demanding, a special office and everything, and you're going like, no, Jesus, I don't expect that. I feel uncomfortable, I feel like an arsehole. It's like just within reason, if you could make some accommodations within reason, that's not putting anybody else out. That's all I'm asking for. You know, I don't want people to see me as the weirdo that sits over his high office and can't be bothered or has no social skills. That's not fair on anybody else. So I understand on that part as well. But if I need help, like all I really need is assurance that I'd be given training and that if I am unsure of stuff, I can go and talk to people about it. If I'm unsure about something, I need to know that I can go and communicate with people so that I can do my job as best as possible, without being a burden, which we are in a day and age where that is possible, especially in the line of work that I'm looking to get into. I think there are areas where people could help me out, but just about getting me in, I suppose. But yeah, let's look at the overlapping symptoms. Interruptive behavior. Both might have interruptive behavior, such as speaking out of turn. However, in autism, this might stem from challenges in being able to understand social cues, whereas in ADHD, it's often due to impulsivity. So it's like, oh, I saw this really cool dog earlier. I saw this really cool car when people are talking about their day and how it went. It's like, oh, yeah, I saw this. And then this was, whereas thinking autism. For me, anyway, I sometimes struggle to know when people were finished speaking. So there'd be a break in sentence. So I'd start talking and they were still talking. I was like, oh, I thought you were done. And also, like, with some people, I find they take up the whole conversation. So they often will control the room and everything comes back to them. Um, Sometimes I'll try and just relate to people with an interesting point, try and find a common ground. A lot of times, what people will do, and I've noticed it, is they think that I'm bringing it back to me, whereas what I'm actually doing is trying to give my experience to say I understand somewhat because I've been in a similar situation. I find a lot of people are quick to say this is about me, not you, and I'm kind of like I'm trying to relate to you. That's my way of kind of going, you're not alone here. But a lot of people will take that as, oh, you're making my problems all about you now. You know what I mean? Which I can understand to a degree, but a lot of people are very sensitive now, are quick to go, oh, you're judging me, you're attacking me, you're not listening to me, or you're making it all about you, it's about me, without actually even listening to what I've just said. With the ADHD side, I can understand because it's like it's something I have to say. I'm bursting to say it. I'll explode if I don't get my point across. So I need to get it out now. Um, Not like a tick, because that's Tourette's, but with ADHD, it's almost like I've got to get this out now. I've got an important point um, to make. Yeah, both can be disruptive maybe and interrupt, but yeah, I guess with autism, it's like not reading when the conversation is finished, but when the person's done speaking, I mean, and also maybe feeling maybe this is a bit of both actually, but for me, what I get is I feel like I've got an interesting point to add. Do you ever get this? So in a particular part of the conversation, you have a really interesting thing to add, but then if the person keeps talking and going on about something else, the moment has passed for you to get your little bit in there. You know what I mean? So let's say somebody will be talking about what would you even say? They're bringing their golden retriever for a walk in the park, and you'll be going on, well, I have a golden retriever, and then I'll be talking about Alfie, and because I love talking about him. And then like, yeah, I brought him to the park, and we went for a long walk, and then I went to the gym, and then I went home, and the conversation goes off. Whereas I was like, oh, I want to talk about Alfie. I have a golden retriever too, but now the moment has passed, you know, because they've gone on in a different tangent, and it's not relative to the conversation. Or I've even waited till the person is done and said something like that, like, oh, I have a golden retriever too. But everybody else will be focused on way down the line, whereas I'll still be focusing back on the I have a dog too, cute retriever. So just an example, you know what I mean? It's kind of a, I don't know if it's a great example, but that'll be how it works for me. This is an interesting one now. So emotional dysregulation. People with autism and ADHD can both sometimes find it hard to regulate their emotions, leading to mood swings. Autistic people might have a strong emotional reaction to changes in their routine, while someone with ADHD might respond in a similar way when they're frustrated or disappointed. Um, hmm, yeah, like, see, I know this is going to sound weird. I can more so relate to just being frustrated or disappointed. I can't really relate to the routine part. I've never really had a routine, you know, like funny enough, my life's been quite chaotic, so there's been a lot of change, you know, with upheaving the house with dad coming and going, you know, in school, out of school, kind of doing my own thing. Me and my brother going to the gym, we should have been in school. I'm not someone who's dead set on a routine, and I never really have been. In fact, I find it quite hard to set a routine if I'm being honest with you. Um, I would relate much more to being frustrated or disappointed, like building up your hopes only to have them fucking crushed. That really pisses me off, and that's when my emotions get fucked up. You know, I can get very frustrated when I've got something important to add, and I feel like I'm not being listened to, or if I've got a great idea that I'm not able to put into good use. You know, you see the autistic people, and I've seen it before, where they've got a very rigid routine up every minute, every morning at the same time, let's say, and that's a good routine to be in, but it's not one I've ever been able to do. You know, I've been very bad at that. I wish I was better at, to be honest with you, but you see a lot of autistic people, and everything has to be the same. Their shirts have to be the same. Um, Everything has to be at the same angle. Their shoes have to be done the same way. And if one little thing, like just one, is out of whack, they're out of whack. And I feel like I've had to kind of adapt to that. So maybe when I was younger, the routine needed to be the same, but I would be quite a poorly routine person, shall we say. Um, Sometimes good, but I would definitely relate more to this if I'm being perfectly honest. Frustration and disappointment really fucking annoy me. That's what, well, I mean, frustration is annoyment, isn't it? But annoyment is not even a word. I don't know. But the routine being thrown off wouldn't get to me as much, to be honest with you. And like even with the first big boy job out of college that I got, working out in a pharmaceutical plant in Dunboyne. And first of all, it was up at all hours, you know, so I was off to work. And um, I guess if I don't get that morning coffee, that's what throws me for the day. So maybe that one. but I could eat my lunch at different times. Like sometimes I'd be eating my lunch at 9 a.m., other times 10:30 in the morning. Didn't have to be rigid at the same time. Whenever the lads were going, I'd ask them, was anybody heading for lunch? Sometimes I felt awkward, so if the lads would say, oh, Dan, you coming for lunch? You'd be like, yeah, yeah, great, sounds good. Um, but then, like I say, my shifts got changed to night shift because that's when the sampling took place, and I adapted to that. Now, I don't know if someone who is rigid in their routine that has autism will be able to do that because it's like, no, I work at these hours, and that's very rigid adherence to a routine. But for me, I was able to do it with the help of a shit ton of stimulants. I'm not even being funny. I had about 8 cups of coffee on one shift when I start doing night shifts. That's not good for you. Um, yeah, I guess frustration and feeling that your life's not going anywhere, the feeling like I put in a lot of effort in college and studying. I don't know if I'm getting my just rewards for it because, I've tried in interviews and I've tried really hard, but it doesn't seem like I'm getting anything from it, you know. Um, that's causing me a great deal of frustration at the moment and disappointment because I feel like I've put in a lot of effort to build a good CV, go to college, work my arse off. I worked throughout college as well. Um, See, I was always able to do loads of different things, but I guess being a bit of a jack of all trades and a master of none. Whereas what I associate with autism is you one thing and you are fucking ace at it. You know what I mean? Um, whereas I've got my fingers in loads of different pieces of the pie. Is that even, am I saying that right? Um, but I might, I'd be able to help one person in one way and then another person in another way because of a little bit of knowledge in a lot of different areas. Whereas I'm not, and I would like to be, believe me, I'd like to be an expert and someone goes, that's Dan, he knows how to do X, Y, and Z. But I'm also grateful that I can do so many different things because I could be struck to a or stuck to a rigid routine. But because I have so many different interests, I find that rubs off on other people, and also I can relate to what they're talking about. Whereas if I was rigid and adhered to a strict routine, I probably couldn't relate to a lot of what other people are talking about. And if I only had certain interests, that's all I'd want to talk about. Whereas I've learned how to deal with that and how to go, look, other people are allowed to discuss their interests, and I actually show interest in that. Ask them. That's a good way of getting to know someone and communicating with them. But people can tell when you're genuinely not interested, so try and show interest genuinely. And I think I've gotten really good at doing that now. They might say otherwise, but hyperactivity, it's in the name, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. But some autistic people might display hyperactive behaviors, such as excessive and repetitive movements, like I was talking about the stimming thing. Um, Definitely quite repetitive, especially when they're stressed or overwhelmed. So these excessive and repetitive movements are definitely more common. Yeah, when I'm stressed and overwhelmed, I will stim a hell of a lot more. Similarly, people with ADHD may struggle to sit still and always seem to be moving. These shared characteristics can lead to misdiagnosis or not spotting when both autism and ADHD are present in the same person, which is what Leah, you were saying you have both, and I was diagnosed with both, but autism's the one that stuck anyway. Um, the ADHD seems to have been retracted, as I say, but I think there's definitely some of it underlying, to be honest with you. It's important for healthcare professionals to consider the full range of behaviours associated with autism and ADHD when they're assessing a child or adult. This thorough understanding means they can ensure that any support plans are tailored to each person's unique needs. Um, Very good. I'm not taking any more online tests. I already know I've got it. I don't need any online tests, believe me. It's all up here. I passed with flying colours the first time. So I think it's important to, for anyone wondering when to seek a diagnosis and what to expect. Recognizing when the signs of autism or ADHD are significant enough to need a professional evaluation is a crucial step towards getting the right support. If you notice persistent issues in social communication, focus, or behavior that differ from people of similar age and developmental level, then it might be time to reach out for an evaluation and potential diagnosis. Documenting these behaviors and symptoms can provide valuable insights for healthcare professionals. It's a good idea to keep a record of specific instances of concern, noting patterns that emerge and situations where these behaviors are most obvious. If you're concerned about yourself or your child, you may wish to reach out to your GP for an initial discussion. They'll be able to explore your symptoms, conduct any relevant autism or ADHD screening tests, and refer you to a specialist psychologist or psychiatrist for a formal assessment if they think this is needed. Just FYI, it's expensive when you're an adult to get an assessment, so it's like a grand, I think. My mum said she had to pay as well when we were getting an actual assessment done. But all the child psychiatrists and psychologists were free. It's just for the assessment that you need to pay for. But once you get that, there are services available. Um, what I'd like to just say on that though is don't necessarily take all the advice that the doctors give. There's a lot of you can't do this and you won't do this. I just want to say that that's been my experience. And from talking to other neurodivergent people, they say the same thing. And I don't think that's helpful. You can't, you won't, you shouldn't, you never will take these pills to make you more manageable and tolerable. Fuck that, like a lot of it I don't find very helpful. Some of it, yes, but especially for parents, I think show an interest in your kid. If your kid's interested in something, try your best to relate to them and actually spend time with them, like they're your kids. So there's nothing worse than, I mean, whenever for anybody, like it's the same, but you're different when you're neurodivergent. Like I knew that, like and that's the thing, it's divergent, it's diverging from the norm. Um, so it is very frustrating knowing that, not being able to relate to other kids. Add that in if your own parents can't relate to you, it's extremely upsetting, and it was for me, because I thought, what's wrong with me? Why am I such a problem? Why can't I be better? And it does often occur to me when I worked in a cafe, I often looked at families sitting down having a nice meal and thinking, and it made me sad because of all the times that I couldn't do that when I was a kid because I couldn't sit still, I couldn't pay attention. I was, messing around, jumping, fidgeting, and sometimes I just wanted to mess around with my toys, and I couldn't concentrate. It was very frustrating for me, but I was also upset that I couldn't relate to anybody and nobody seemed to be able to relate to me. It's extremely upsetting and it still affects me to this day. Nothing worse than being invalidated. It's the worst feeling in the world. Having your feelings made feel tiny is probably the worst feeling there is. What are you moaning about? People have it way worse than you. That's a terrible fucking thing to say to anyone, especially a child with neurodivergence. It minimizes any struggle they're going through. And believe me, there are many. So yeah, being inside this head is a clusterfuck. It's messy. I find it hard to focus. I get burnouts. I get anxious even in a very non-threatening environment. Just simply if I say the wrong thing, I'll make a fool of myself. Or if I like a person, I don't want to offend them or upset them. I want to appear competent all the time, and then the fact that it takes me longer to catch up with people, and as you say, dating, it was longer to catch up with that and socialize with the opposite sex. That was something that took me ages as well. Um, it's important to not feel invalidated, and I think this is it's a really good case study here, and this is from the Priory Group, right? So just get that up for you now at the top. And it's written by Rachel Heeds, clinically reviewed by Natasha Hussain, from Priory, cognitive behavioral therapist, CBT therapist at Priory Hospital, Barnt Green. I think it's a really good article. So if you want to check it out, feel free. And there's a test down below. I'm gonna stop sharing there anyway. Yeah, let me know if you'd like more content like this. I'd like to go back to making content like this where I take a deep dive into stuff, that isn't as confrontational necessarily as my last one, feral youth and harm. But I'll do it if there's a hunger for it, even just one person says they'd like to see more. Absolutely. What I'll do is overlap with autism and other conditions because I feel like it's not enough to talk about autism on its own. I'd like to discuss how it interacts with borderline, definitely, depression for sure, burnout, what that is, and we've talked about that before, but we're going to take a deep dive, and I'm going to have this yoke so I can share articles with you as well, just to give you a visual, because I think a lot of people who are neurodivergent can be visual learners, so that will help them as well. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one, guys.